And we welcome you back. Yesterday, Congressman Ron DeSantis of Florida announced that he's going to run for Senate in a bid to replace Marco Rubio.
Yeah, and just before this announcement, he unveiled a new bill that backs congressional term limits.
That's convenient, isn't it? Back for more, political analyst Raul. And also joining us, Rabin, host of The Agenda on Sirius XM Radio. Ari, it's good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let me ask you this real quickly, Raul. Since you're from Florida, DeSantis earned his endorsement from FreedomWorks almost minutes after the announcement. I have to admit, I was a little bit surprised that it took this long for a guy like DeSantis to jump in the race. After all, folks like Pam Bondi, the popular attorney general, Jeff Atwater, the state's chief financial officer, who is also a very popular guy, and even Congressman Tom Rooney, who has a military background, they decided not to run. So why did it take so long for DeSantis to jump in this race, Raul?
You know, I honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. I think he's a terrific candidate. I think he's going to be a strong contender for the position. He's relatively young, but he's got a very strong background. You know, he's a bright individual, Yale undergraduate, Harvard Law School, served in the Navy as a lawyer, actually deployed overseas, I believe, with SEAL Team 1 out of California as their legal advisor. He's got a solid resume. I don't know why he sort of hesitated in jumping. I think he's got a good shot at it, and he's a good guy.
Well, he's going to be running against a guy named Patrick Murphy, who is a freshman congressman. He is the guy who defeated Allen West, though, kind of a dragon slayer. Ari, what do you think about Patrick Murphy's chances of winning this Senate seat? He seems to have that gift where you jump in a race, he beat Allen West, and now he has a shot to win this Senate seat.
Well, look, he's been heavily recruited by the DSCC. They like him. I think, in general, look, Florida in a Democratic presidential year bodes well for Democrats. I think the numbers tend to side with my side of the line. He won't, but Patrick Murphy won't necessarily be the nominee. There are a number of others who have expressed interest in getting in the race. So we'll actually see how this shakes out in the next 6 months. Yeah,
Debbie Wasserman Schultz's name has been mentioned as well. We'll see about that. But, Raul, let's follow up here real quickly because Patrick Murphy, again, he ran against Allen West, and according to the record, he beat him. But a lot of folks would say Allen West defeated himself.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. You know, that was a difficult district to begin with.
Yeah, the RNC
didn't
do him any favors with that district they drew for him either.
And you know, Patrick Murphy is calling himself a centrist, which is a little bit laughable, quite frankly. But I don't think he'll play very well in other parts of the state of Florida. You know, the Panhandle area, that I-4 corridor, which is obviously very strongly, you know, conservative and tends to be more Republican. I think outside of South Florida, quite frankly, he's going to have a tough road to hoe.
All right, Raul and Ari, let's switch gears now and talk about Hillary Clinton. A new CNBC Millionaire survey shows young millionaires actually prefer Hillary over Jeb Bush. Hillary wins 70% of the vote with millionaires under the age of 50, while Jeb Bush wins over 50% of the vote and voters over 70. Hillary has said before she would like to topple the wealthy. She's also attacked CEO pay. Raul, will identifying with young millionaires rather destroy her advocate for the middle class campaign? Your thoughts?
Look, I mean, you know, the Clintons are very good at obfuscation and sort of playing both sides against the middle, right? So, I mean, here they are basically making, you know, millions of dollars in speaking fees and through the Clinton Foundation, et cetera, and yet they're pretending to be the voice of the working class and the oppressed. I see it, quite frankly, as a bit of a difficult sell. But unfortunately, you know, if you take out the millionaire part, you're talking about young people that unfortunately, you know, tend to be a little bit naive when it comes to matters of their wallet and their, you know, what's going to happen politically when you have a third term of President Obama, which is in essence what you're getting with Hillary.
So, Ari, are young millionaires just being naive?
I would say no, but I also question this poll in that you're slicing a tiny population of a tiny population.
Sure.
Right? You're taking a tiny subgroup of a tiny subgroup and saying, this tiny subgroup supports this. I don't even know what that pertinence is in the election, because how many what is the actual population of millionaires in this country?
Well, let me ask you this, Ari, though. Is she connecting with the middle class? Let's not even talk about the millionaires. Is Hillary doing a good job connecting to the middle class?
Look, I think the issue she's coming out with, how she's running her campaign, is doing a good job connecting across the board. That's why you see her in the NBC Wall Street Journal poll leading nearly every Republican candidate by more than 10 points.
And also, she's just there's only one other candidate in the Democratic race, that being Bernie Sanders, but she does not seem to be affected at all by any of the negative press that's being thrown at her as of late. Still doing very well against other Democratic candidates. But guys, Ari, go ahead. We got about 20 seconds before we have to go.
I was going to say there's frankly a reason for that. It's because even news stories aren't new. There's nothing new to the negative press about Hillary, so it's very difficult for any of it to affect her.
All right, fair enough.
All right, we're going to continue our roundtable with Raul Mas and Ari Rabin Havt coming up next, right here on Newsmax.
And we welcome you back. Continuing our roundtable discussion. Now you see Ari Rabin Havt there and also Raul Mas joining us for more of our conversation. When we were just stepping aside, we were talking about Hillary Clinton, her efforts here. Let's also talk a little bit about Ted Cruz and something that he said recently. Ted Cruz telling the Dallas Morning News on Tuesday, quote, "Once again, as with Nidal Hasan and the Tsarnaev brothers, we have radical Islamic terrorists who this administration knew about and yet failed to connect the dots and prevent this act of terrorism." All right, let me get you to weigh in on Ted Cruz here and whether or not you think he's explicitly blaming the Obama administration for this attack down in Texas.
I mean, I think his words are pretty clear that he is, and I think it's ridiculous. You're talking about, two kind of random guys who we had on our radar, but were both kind of random, in committing an act against free speech, frankly, free speech that I find bigoted, but free speech nonetheless that should be defended and is constitutionally protected and should be free from the threat of violence. But blaming the Obama administration because two guys showed up in an event with guns and, by the way, were stopped immediately by law enforcement is kind of ridiculous.
Raul, your thoughts?
Yeah. Look, I quite frankly tend to agree with my colleague. I think it's a little bit of a stretch. I think it was a little bit premature on the part of Ted Cruz, and believe me, I'm a big supporter of Ted. But I think we don't have all the facts yet. Quite frankly, when something like this happens, I think it's the wiser course of action to really figure out what transpired, what happened before you start sort of, slinging accusations. Now, I will say one thing. I mean, this president has not necessarily been unequivocal when it comes to issues of free speech, in particular, images of the Prophet Muhammad. In fact, he's been quite the opposite. He's sort of said that, we shouldn't be going down that path. And, perhaps that added a little bit of fuel to the fire. But I think it's a little bit too much of a rush to judgment right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you both for joining us. Raul Mas, Ari Rabin Havt. Thank you. I don't think I said your name quite right, so I want to do it justice. Thank you both for joining us here on Newsmax Now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.